tackle on the windshield. This looks like it's going to be a pretty frustrating and difficult job. But today I'm going to jump into getting this windshield mounted. And so to mount the windshield, the process is to put this level across, and that's basically going from the top of the butt rib all the way across the other top of the butt rib. And that's going to set your plane for where the windshield's going to lay on top of. It's going to be up attached to the top of that. Then we're taking this piece here and we're going to slide it up. It's got a plexiglass spacer taped to the top. That's to simulate the turtle deck is going to go right there. So there's going to create a pocket there so that the turtle deck can slide in. And I'm going to push that up so it's level with the bottom of the level. And that's going to be glued into place. And I put that tape on there because that's where the clamps are going to rest. And you can see I did wrap it to match the panel. That's going up there. And get that in place. The angle at which it mounts is also important, so you want to match the angle of the level as well. And then once that's in place, that's got to dry overnight, and then we'll jump into the next portion, which is to go ahead and put the windshield up on there and start doing the trimming of the windshield to match the butt ribs and cut out around the carry-through spars. All that real nerve-wracking part of cutting the acrylic because it can crack at any point on you. And then we'll get that all set to go with the windshield, and then we'll jump into the glare shield. So triangle windows after that, and then the turtle deck. Alright guys, so I'm working the windshield here. I'm on cut number, sorry, I thought that might be a crack. Trim number 3 on the edge here to try to get it lined up with the boot cowl. And also up at the top to get it pushed back to get the right angle. And then I'm also trying to gain that spacing right there where it's almost flush with the back of this turtle deck support. I think I'm pretty close to it now. So I'll fit up the boot cowl real quick and see if that did it. So I'm just under a 1/4 inch off from getting the other side hole in. So what I'll do is take slightly less than an 1/8 inch off both sides to pull it back together. It's close. This is where you can really screw it up from this point moving forward. So trying to decide whether to call it a night and start at it fresh tomorrow morning. I am going to trim it up even with the butt rib, and that's because of the prototype wing and the way I covered my standard wing. The fabric is level with the top of the butt rib. It actually sticks up a little bit, so the windshield will kind of slide in there instead of having the windshield over the wing. So when I make the cuff's going to go up over both of them, and I'm going to make it full length to the back of carbon, so light carbon, and that's for waterproofing. So I'm going to show you what I'm talking about when I get to that point. Hey guys, got a new camera. It's a Sony ZV-1 and I'm trying that out right now. So hopefully this will help increase the quality of the videos. Up to this point I've been using this GoPro Hero 7. I actually have two of these. These are great cameras also, especially for what I'm doing because of the time lapse and the wide angle. So you can see the camera I'm using at the moment isn't as wide angled, but it also does a bunch of stuff that the GoPros can't. And so I'm looking forward to kind of learning this camera and using it for some of this stuff. So I'm excited about that. Getting back to the windshield, I've had to take it on and off about 4 or 5 times to trim and then sand. Trim a little bit, sand a little bit to get it to fit the way I want. I wish there was a better way to do this where you could just set it on there and mark where you need to cut it and cut it. But because of the shape of the windshield, you can't lay it on the outside to mark it without breaking it. So, especially with being cold out here, I don't want to flex this thing too much. So basically it's cut it, try to fit it. If it needs a little bit more, take it off, guess how much, cut it. It's not my favorite part of the build so far. So I'm looking forward to getting it done. But the 3 places you want it to line up are, with the boot cowl. Then you want the windshield to come to the top of the support beam up here. There's actually 4 places. And then you want it to be flush with the top of the leading edge of the butt rib. And then you want it to overhang off the back far enough so that when you put your turtle deck on, there's an overlap like this so that it sheds water. So all the way to the back of the windshield support basically is where you want that to fall. So the next step is I got to measure how far out my leading edge spar on the wing, how far it extends past the rib. So I can measure how far in I need to cut the windshield. And the reason you do that is because when you fold the wing in, if you were to swing it too far or I don't know, you weren't careful with it being lined up and you contact the windshield with the momentum of that wing, it's going to shatter the windshield. So they want you to come from the top of that support, relieve it up around and then back to the leading edge of the butt rib and cut out enough so that the pin can come out. So that's what I'm going to be measuring and cutting next. Nervous about that because it looks like there's a lot of pressure right in that area. This seems like the area it's going to crack if it's going to crack. But I think the forward cuts are done. I'm pretty happy with those. If anything, I'd have to take off just a little bit more to give myself enough room on the inside of this to put weather stripping. Other than that, I think it's going pretty good. These holes are all cut. The sides are trimmed to the size I want them to be. And so now I really just need to finish all those edges with down to 150 grit sandpaper to prevent any potential cracking. And then I also marked the overhang line for the butt rib, and that will get cut. So I got to cut here, then I should be done with the cutting on the windshield. And then it's just about drilling the holes without cracking it. So there's a lot of work still to do on the windshield without getting it to crack. All right, so I got the bottom part cut for the 2 inches below the boot cowling line. And I went ahead and sanded the edges with 60 grit. And I'll come back over that when I'm all done with 150 grit just to get that nice and smooth so we can alleviate any stress points for cracks. Alright, so we've got this cut done. You can see the pin comes up just fine. It's relieved around where the spar is going to go and no cracks yet. So both sides have that cutout done. Our pillars are cut to get a nice flush mount all the way along the cowling. Take you around to the back. The back's got the proper overhang all the way to the back of this bend. And it seems to be fairly straight. All right, getting back to work on the windshield. So I just pulled it off again. It's over on the workbench. So what I did is I marked the spots going up the pillars, and I'm going to drill those holes on both sides, and then I also have to drill the holes that go through the front flange. So I came up with an idea there on what I'm going to do, because I want to make it removable and I don't want to have to pull the glare shield to get behind to undo the bolts every time I want to take the boot cowl off. So coming up is the glare shield, and we're going to make these brackets right here. The brackets are going to go and connect to those bolts that come through the boot cowl, and they'll come up with a bend, and then the glare shield is going to connect to those brackets. So on these brackets where that hole is, so right here, I'm going to put a nut plate back there so that I can put the screw in through the boot cowl, take it in and out without having to get behind the boot cowl. So that way I can undo those screws and the boot cowl comes off. Because that bracket is connected to the glare shield, it won't rotate and it will hold in place. So that's the idea there. So next step will be to put the windshield back on, and I'm going to transfer all these holes that I just drilled and deburred. I want to make sure you deburr the backside so that a sharp piece of metal doesn't bite into that acrylic and cause a crack. So I'll get the window shield on there, transfer those using the 1/8 acrylic bit that's provided in the kit, and then we'll get that cleat in place, and then we can start working on the upper holes along the butt rib. All right, like I may have mentioned before, this is not really my favorite part. Every time you put a hole in it, a cut, I'm worried it's going to break, but so far so good. So I got all of them across the cowling, the boot cowl drilled, and then up the pillars drilled. So next is to do the ones on top of the butt rib, and then the back window support. Then I got to cut each side the overhang off, and then the window will be fit. All right, a couple pointers on doing this drill through the butt rib top cap. There's that piece of aluminum that we high soled underneath there. As you drill down, you're going to push on that glued connection there, or that bond, and it's going to potentially peel away. So if you use a block as you drill, just take it and put it underneath there and drill down through. Using the block, it'll prevent it from separating from the rib. All right, so I mapped this out to get the back bolt where I wanted it before the flare, and the front bolt at about where I want it, and then spaced in between. What that did is gave me 3-inch spacings, except for one I went 4 and then back to 3. It also says to drill the hole on the center of this ridge cap, and I don't know if you can see from the camera focus, but this ridge cap is offset inward, and if you did do it right in the center, you would be too close to the rib to fit the nuts that are going to go on the inside of that. Oh, I'll find that later. So a little bit further to the outboard of center is where I found it needs to be. So we've got all the holes drilled now. So another little tip on this is that when you're drilling down through these, it'd be really easy to go through the support and into the spar, carry through spar. So I took a thick piece of aluminum, just slid it up underneath as I drilled each one, and that prevents the drill from hitting the carry through spar at all. So this is just some scrap, and I'm practicing the drilling on this to make sure I don't get a crack. The edge along the butt rib, once I trim that, it's going to have those holes really close to the edge of the acrylic. And you can see in this one, possibly, that it cracked. The first time I drilled it, you start with a 1/8 inch acrylic drill bit, and then we open it up with the 1/4 inch acrylic drill bit. Going from the 1/8 to 1/4, that's what the result was. It definitely cracked because you're trying to force that big bit through there. So my friend Mark Myers, he's also building a Kitfox 7. We've been talking a lot during build, helping each other out. He suggested these tapered drill bits for doing this acrylic work to enlarge in those holes. And what it does is it doesn't force so much pressure out right away going from 1/8 to 1/4. You can step up too. You could go 1/8, you work your way up in sizes to the 1/4 inch to get the same effect as what this is doing, but this is real easy. And it does have the countersink top on it. So I drilled 6 holes with this, and for starting with the 1/8, then using this to enlarge in it. And then I went and used the 1/8 to open it up further, and I didn't get a single crack on any of those. Looks like I did, 6 of those. So I'm gonna do a couple more practice ones. I might even get a little closer to the edge, but like this one here is within it's less than 1/8 of an inch to the edge, and it didn't crack. So that's encouraging. So I recommend these tapered drill bits to do this. The purpose of oversizing them is this is the 1/4 inch. So that the screw that you put in there can float a little bit. So you can see that movement with the windshield. That's so if during heat expansion, it can move around a little bit. Obviously, the advice that I got early on, Scott Noble mentioned this to me, that if you reverse the butt ribs, because the butt ribs, it's not the ridge cap's not centered. It overhangs further on one side than the other. And that overhang is then you put a little strip of aluminum in there that you glue on the back side, and that's to hold the windshield with the screws and the nuts in there. The suggestion was to switch them. Instead of having the thick part on the outside, if you swap the butt ribs, you have the thick part on the inside. And what that would do, let's say this is the edge, the outer edge, this is where my hole is. If I swapped them, my hole would be like over here, and I'd have a lot more distance between the hole and the edge of the windshield. The drawback is I'd already mounted them for me, so I had to basically redo all the brackets that hold the butt rib to the airframe. But the drawback is that you see all the hardware that holds the windshield down in the cockpit. It all lines up along that rib. But you don't end up with this problem where you have holes really close to the edge of the windshield, which could potentially crack on you. So this is what I ended up with. Those of you guys that are building that haven't made that decision yet, I would recommend swapping the butt ribs so that you don't run into this issue with the holes being so close to the edge of the windshield. I apologize a little bit. I didn't get any of this on film just because I was cruising on it. Working on the glare shield. Basically what I did here was I cut out a template, Yeah, I know, that's real interesting shape, huh? So anyway, cut that out, transferred it over to the actual glare shield. Now I'm going to pull it up tight against the boot cowl and drill these holes that line up with it. And what you're supposed to do with these is take and make a little bracket that screws in to the windshield and the boot cowl, and then just pinches the glare shield between the windshield and the boot cowl. Just kind of pinches it in there. I didn't like that idea because I want to be able to remove this boot cowl. So I put nut plates on the back of these brackets, and then these will actually be glued onto the inside of the glare shield, and they'll position at that same spot. And then when windshield's on, the screw will pass through the boot cowl, through the windshield, and into the nut plate that's glued to the glare shield. That way I can remove these 4 screws, and the rest of the screws, the boot cowl can come off, and these nut plates stay in place. No big deal. So that's my thought behind that. There's a couple different methods of doing this. I talked to a couple different builders about permanently affixing this cutout right here in that section so the glare shield comes in and out, doing nut plates. A lot of complicated ways to get around not having this opening right here. I've actually found it's somewhat useful to have an opening. I actually take my GPS antenna through that opening and just set it right here. So I'm not real concerned about trying to block out that hole. You could make a little filler or something, but I'm not concerned with it really. So this will get the synergy suede on top. So like I said, right now I'm just going to locate these holes. So I'm going to fasten this down, make sure I get this centered up right where it needs to be. I'll drill a 1/8 hole, cleco it, and then get the rest of them so I can get this thing positioned up where it needs to be. And then the other side that I'm watching while I'm doing that is to make sure I have it so it will come down flat along the instrument panel. I've got those brackets you can see through this fiberglass. It's kind of cool that you can see through it, because now I can see through where I'm going to drill that hole when it's all lined up. Go ahead and drill that, and then we'll mark the inside line, determine how much overhang I want, and then we'll cut that glare shield for the proper overhang line. We're working on this glare shield. Just about got me worn out for the day, and it's only 2 o'clock. This is a example of 2 parts that don't want to fit together. So the windshield comes off and comes over to the pillar here. The glare shield at some point has to separate from that arc to come inside to the panel. Not knowing where that is, when I initially drilled the hole, I was going to do 4 tabs, 2 up top, and I put 1 right here. This seems to be just past where the arc of that glare shield leaves the arc of the windshield. So I can't get this up flush without putting stress on the window, which I don't want to do. So really, to put the 2 other tabs in, I'm going to have to do an additional holes here. So now I've got these holes, and the whole point of doing this the way I was doing it is we could remove these screws because of the backing plates, and we wouldn't have to get underneath to undo anything from the windshield in order to get the boot cowl off. All right, so after a ton of frustration with this stupid thing, so I trimmed. You can see this black line is about where the panel is, so I gave myself a 1-inch overhang. Sometimes guys can find some weather stripping or something that finishes that off real nice. I might look around on the internet, see if I can find something that might kind of satisfy that that finished edge, but I couldn't find anything off the shelf locally. I took that overhang and then on the side I went ahead and tapered it back in, and so it's flush with the panel on either side. This is the cut out for the bars in the front. All right, so the glare shield's done. It was a pretty big task for me today. I don't know why, I was just having a hard time with it. And that's kind of my tip for the day, is to, if you get frustrated, put your tools down, walk away, clear your head, go do something else for a little while, then come back to it. I had to do that today. I was getting to the point where I was gonna make a mistake on it. I got frustrated with some things about it not fitting right, and just took a little break. So, you know, you guys have been watching this progression. I don't know if I really got into the fact that there are times that I get frustrated with a lack of direction from the directions. A little puzzled about which way to go. You can reach out to friends, but you know, trying to explain how to cut that groove out to fit the crossbars over the phone is really difficult. That went okay. It's just, there were some things that were just really bugging me, so I took a break. And you know, that's part of it, part of the build. You know, it's not going to be all roses every day. All right, so let this dry overnight. What I ended up doing is using the high saw to glue these brackets in place that have nut plates, but I also put 2 rivets in there. That's just because when you screw in these screws, it's putting a lot of twisting motion on that bracket that could shear the glue away from the surface. So adding a couple rivets gives you more grip for that twisting action. So it should be all dry. Pull the clamps off. This weight off of here, and then I'll test fit that one more time, make sure that all worked out. I also had to do a little relief cut on the pilot side, and that's for the wires to pass through that go up the pillar to go out to the wing and the headsets. All right guys, so we did a complete shop rearranging last night in order to get the airplane in. So I moved the workbenches over, still kind of rearranging stuff so we can have room to work around in here, but the wings are open, which means I can go ahead and complete the assembly of everything. Pull the glare shield back out, and I've got the upholstery for it to go on. I actually took this, got this trim that's going to go around this perimeter here that's going to finish it out real nice. So we're going to put that on after the Synergy suede covering. And then I've got a GPS antenna to mount right up on there. Then we're going to start hooking up some of the fuel lines and wiring for the wing. And then when we get all that done, we're going to test everything out again electrically. I did get the Grand Rapids programmed. The only thing that still needs to be tested is the GPS reception and the transponder. That will be done probably down at the airport. So the list is, it's getting pretty short. All right, I forgot to start the camera, but I just sprayed the glare shield with the 3M adhesive, and I'm laying the Synergy suede over, working it out, all the wrinkles, getting it nice and smooth on top, and then I'm going to go ahead and fold it underneath the other side, and then figure out how the best way to do the cutout around the opening. All right, the glare shield is in with the black Synergy suede on top. So I use this trim piece. It's a U-shaped. It's got aluminum inside of it. It's wrapped with like a rubber material. and put that around the edge just to finish it off real nice. That came out really good. Down to there. And I carried the brow over to the door hinge point, and then I took that and angled it in right there, and then flush with the panel the rest of the way down. So, cross that one off. Glare shield's done. I could really go ahead and fit the windshield now. I'm just a little reluctant because I'm worried that I'll have to do something under the panel. The glare shield's only 6 screws and it comes back off again, so I don't want to have to take the windshield off. It's a whole lot more than 6 screws. But it is cut and ready, so getting there. I built an airplane inside a garage, and now I don't think I can get it back out. Just kidding. So the best way for us to fit it in here and continue to work on the finished stuff without having to push it out every time I want to work on it was to open the wings in the garage. It was a bit of a chore to get that done. Thanks to my wife. Appreciate the help. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap this one up here, and I'm going to roll right into the editing on the turtle deck. So I should have that video up shortly after this one. So go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Leave comments if you guys have any questions, and we'll see you on the turtle deck episode on the next one.